Ink Ribbon.
Another year, another Tomb Raider game to cover. I didn't mean for half this video to be an art and history lesson, but you'll see. By the year 2000, the Tomb Raider franchise had gotten so big, so fast, that it was hard to keep up, especially if you were one of the developers working on the game. Regardless of how you feel about it, this is the next game for me to cover for Tomb Raider Month, which I just realized means I've been doing Tomb Raider Month for 5 years now. Wow. Well, on that note, from meeting Lara's parents to punching Duke Nukem in the face, here is my list of secrets and Easter eggs for Tomb Raider Chronicles.
Number 10.
Rome. The game is divided into 4 sections, with each being a story about one of Lara's adventures. Each of the stories are told by 4 men who were important to Lara, including Winston. Starting with the Philosopher's Stone, the story they all seem to know, which implies that it's been told many times over the years. The opening cutscene shows Lara at the opera, and the song is actually a real opera song.
She's just a picture.
Ah, the charming Mr. Larson. Has Pierre let you off the lead?
The title is Voi che sapete, which was written by Mozart as part of the opera Marriage of Figaro. I know absolutely nothing about opera, but I'm sure that that's a famous one. Speaking of opera, you'll notice that Lara is wearing a dress. I couldn't find any information of the dress she wears, whether it was based on a real dress or not, but I did want to just mention that anytime you see gloves this long, they are literally called opera gloves. I searched everywhere I could for an explanation as to why she goes from dress to wearing her normal outfit, but there's nothing about it. I'm guessing it could have been a cutscene or something that got removed, but only the devs would know. And just like Tomb Raider Last Revelation, the leg straps for her holsters are still missing from her character model, for some reason. At the beginning of the Rome levels, you'll come across a cafe. Looking at the sign, you'll see it's called the Antico Cafe Greco. This is not only a real cafe, but a famous one because it's the oldest bar in Rome and the second oldest bar in all of Italy, being opened back in 1760. Not only that, but it has had a lot of prolific writers have coffee there regularly, including Byron, Mark Twain, Orson Welles, and many more. Also throughout these levels are these switches located inside the mouths of some round stone faces. These are also real, based on a famous piece called Boca della Verità, or Mouth of Truth. This 2,800-pound stone mask has the legend that anyone who is lying when they place their hand inside of its mouth will have their hand bitten off, as seen in the 1953 movie Roman Holiday. The second Rome level is Trajan's Market, which I never realized until making this video that it's Trajan, not Trojan. I feel like I just experienced a Mandela effect, but either way, turns out Trajan's Market is also a real place, known as the world's oldest shopping mall, dating all the way back to 100 AD. Its history includes everything from grocery shopping to libraries and even offices where battles were planned for war. Each section of the levels that Lara goes through are a retelling of how she acquired an artifact, and for Rome it's the Philosopher's Stone, which shockingly is also based on a real thing. Well, sort of. Dating all the way back to 300 AD, this stone has been in numerous books, historical documents, movies, and of course video games. Now the interesting thing is that in this game it's literally a stone, but in history it's not a stone but a mythical substance to be used in alchemy. It supposedly had the ability to turn regular metals into gold and silver, and was also called the Elixir of Life, with legend believing that you could achieve immortality if you drank it. Going back to Tomb Raider though, this segment of levels take place somewhere in 1989, which is before the first Tomb Raider game takes place. So that means Larson survived being tossed by the stone serpent, and Pierre survived the fall in this iconic cutscene.
But I...
Don't let me hold you up.
Number 9.
Russian base. The next story is told by Lara's friend Charles Kane, who I'll get to in a minute. recalling her quest for the Spear of Destiny. I want to start off this section by pointing out that the outfit Lara wears is the first and one of the only times she ever wears a hat. It wasn't until Rise of the Tomb Raider that she wore a hat again. Lara starts off at a Russian naval base, which is actually a real base called Zepandaya Litsa, and it's a big port. One of the reasons it's located there is because of the inhospitable climate, with it being extremely cold and having full days of no sunlight at all. That's probably the reason Lara is wearing a hat. The rest of the section takes place on and around the submarine. In this level set, Lara is in search of the Spear of Destiny. This artifact is also referred to as the Lance of Longinus and the Holy Lance. It's considered a holy relic, believed to have pierced the torso of Jesus during his crucifixion. From what I could find, it seems to be a legendary weapon for some, with it able to kill gods and demons, but it's also seen as a key to world power, making its owner invincible. Unlike most of the artifacts Lara acquires, this one is actually real and it's on display at Hofburg Palace in Vienna, Austria. Sergei, a former KGB agent turned Russian mafia leader, is the bad guy. He bribed Admiral Igor Yerofev to use the submarine, and the Admiral was desperate for work and didn't know what Sergei was after until it was too late, so he said yes. Sergei uses Lara to dive and get the spear for him, and then attempts to harness the power of the spear but simply can't handle it, causing him to explode and badly damaging the submarine. As it sinks, Lara talks with the Admiral, who decides to stay behind and die with dignity. He helps her get into an escape pod and she ejects herself. Lara would end up being the only survivor and made the wise decision to leave the spear at the bottom of the sea, making it one of the few artifacts that Lara has abandoned. And the date this all took place was February 15th, the day after Lara's birthday, and it's set in 1995, which is 1 year before the first game takes place.
Number 8.
Black Isle. This section of the game is a story of young Lara, told by Father Bram Patrick Dunstan, who was the Croft family priest, as well as a friend of Lara, and provided the service for her funeral. In 1984, he was called to investigate an island where demonic activity was believed to be happening. Lara, being the curious girl that she is, decided to stow away in his boat. This turns out to be a good thing for the father because she ends up saving his life. It's worth mentioning that the FMV cutscenes were done by a separate company. The reason I mention this is because one of the things that hasn't aged well is this shot of Lara nearly taking off her top. Remember when I said this takes place in 1984? Yeah, Lara was 16, so This shot was also not in the original script and was done by the company that did the FMVs of their own volition. The Black Isle levels were inspired by a lot of different things, including mythology and legends, but was mainly inspired by the cover of the novel Tintin and the Black Island. I haven't read the book, but from what I got in the summary, the only parallels are ending up on a mysterious island and having to deal with a mysterious beast. During the events on the island, Lara and Father Patrick encounter several monsters, including the dragon Nidhogg, imps, and a demon called Verdelet, who is a former soldier that became possessed by a demon. Lara also encounters a hangman and a tree, which is a reference to the Norse mythology of the Tree of Life, also known as Yggdrasil. In folklore, cold iron is believed to harm ghosts, fairies, witches, and other malevolent beings, which is why Lara defeats the imps by throwing an iron clapper at them. And if you ever see random iron things hanging from walls like horseshoes or gears, that's apparently where that comes from.
Number 7.
The 13th Floor. For those of you who weren't around in 1999, The Matrix was one of the biggest movies, and its influence made its way into so many franchises, including, as you can see, Tomb Raider. Taking place in New York, Lara, along with the help of her new employee, Zip, breaks into the VCI building, VCI being short for Von Croy Industries. Remember earlier when I mentioned that a separate company did the FMVs? Well, that's also why Lara infamously is wielding her dual pistols in the opening cutscene, but not in the actual levels. In fact, her costume doesn't even have holsters on her in-game model. If you remember in Last Revelation, Lara joins Von Croy on the hunt for the Iris, which she abandons along with him in order to, not die. Now she's back to collect the iris from him, but he seems to be in pretty bad shape, looking unwell and being in a wheelchair. This is where the timeline gets muddy, so I'll try to explain it as best I can. So when Von Croy got trapped with the iris, he was hung by his leg. He obviously escaped somehow, but possibly severely injured his leg in the process, as we see him with a cane in Last Revelation and at the end of Chronicles, also in The Angel of Darkness. So my guess is that maybe he used a wheelchair for comfort while in his building, but who knows. Listen, those poor game devs were worked so hard, I'm surprised anything made sense at this point. Now, as far as Zip is concerned, he actually has an interesting backstory. He used to work for Von Croy Industries, being the youngest employee ever hired by VCI. And after hacking into the FBI, he was also the youngest person ever to be fired from VCI. After starting his own security company, Lara reached out and asked him to help her break into the VCI building. Not only was he happy to help Lara, but he was eager to get revenge on the company for firing him.
Number 6.
Unused content. Any game with such rushed development cycles will have things that were cut from the game, and Chronicles is no exception. If you were ever confused as to who Charles Kane was, well, you aren't alone, because he was actually supposed to be Johnny Eves, who we met in Last Revelation, but if you remember, there were some controversies when the real archaeologist, Johnny Eves, was publicly upset about having his likeness used without permission. Since Chronicles had already been well into development, he was already in the game and had to be retroactively removed. What's funny is he's still in the beta version of the game, which had been released in small quantities, so some copies of the game actually still have him in the cutscenes. So if you own a copy that still has Johnny Eves, you may have a rare collector's item. Other than that, there's a few unused assets that are still in the game's files, including a scarecrow, a crossbow, and the MP5 also had a silencer attachment at one point. There's a VCI building cutscene that was removed from the game where Lara throws a guard through a window. This was recycled for the idle scenes where Lara throws a guard into a fire pit instead. Probably the biggest thing that went unused was the original story, and it's actually a pretty interesting concept. After Lara was presumed dead, her body was shipped to a creepy island, some of which was repurposed for the Black Isle levels, and it turns out that she wasn't dead, she was actually still alive. On top of this, there would be a crazy billionaire on the island who intended to hunt her for sport. And in the Japanese release of the game, there were some exclusive levels that were just meant as promotions. And a lot of these were weird sort of cross promotions depending on which store you bought the game from.
Number 5.
References. While there aren't as many references as there are in other Tomb Raider games, there are a few I did want to mention. In the first Rome FMV, when Lara gracefully exits the Opera House, you can spot 2 movie posters on the wall. These are real posters from old movies, specifically the 1940 film Rebecca and the 1942 film Casablanca. Tomb Raider had been a part of many ads and promotions, especially in Europe, but this game marked the first time we saw an in-game promotion in the form of the very short-lived and forgotten Timex TMX grip clip, also just called the grip clip. I seem to be the only person who remembered these things, and I still really want one, but not enough to pay $100 for one. Did any of you Tomb Raider fans also want one of these? I looked up more about them and they're pretty cool. Aside from dripping with Y2K aesthetic and coming in a variety of colors, they also are more than just a watch. It's waterproof up to 50 meters, shock resistant, and also has a built-in LED light, a screensaver, and a mystery answer feature, kind of like a magic 8-ball. The giant X-ray hall was actually inspired by the movie Total Recall, where it looks very similar and serves basically the same purpose. And lastly, also during the VCI levels, you'll encounter armored soldiers with laser guns, and I immediately recognize them from my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Eraser, which, as you can see, has the exact same gun effect.
Number 4.
Secrets. Secrets have always been a staple in the series, starting with the literal secrets that serve as collectibles, with a total of 36 in the form of gold roses. Finding all of them will unlock an image gallery, which includes the first images we ever got to see of Angel of Darkness. One of these secrets is worth mentioning because it was one of the rare moments in Tomb Raider where Lara can have a split path, depending on whether or not she kills this employee in the 13th floor level. Only killing him will allow Lara to get the secret. There's also a secret level select system, which functions like a cheat code. When selecting New Game, pressing up and one of the shoulder buttons will start in one of the level sets. If you let the title screen idle, you'll be treated to several fun cutscenes, as well as alternate title screen areas, all of which are related to Lara's death. These include her manor, both inside and out, inside a church, and the dig site where they're trying to find her. I found a playable version of the opening title areas, and there's a bit of interesting weirdness I thought I'd share. As for the mansion areas, they are as expected, where there's nowhere to go, and some areas are just, well, nothing. There's also some weird triggers, like pulling this block, which sends Lara into this cutscene, only to have her turn invisible afterwards. There's also these weird floating locks everywhere, which I'm assuming is something used by the developers, but I have no idea. And the best thing about these is when you go to the dig site in Egypt, you ready for this? Yeah, it's all comically small and Lara is a giant. Oh, the magic of video game trickery. I'll never look at this set piece the same way ever again. Exclusive to Germany, there was a very unique version of Chronicles in the form of an interactive DVD game. They later released the same type of game for Angel of Darkness, so maybe this was like a test run for it. In one of the cutscenes in the Black Isle levels, there's this random high-pitched hallelujah sound that plays. This was just thrown in as a joke and has no purpose or reason for being there.
Number 3.
Easter eggs. There's not as many Easter eggs as I would prefer, but a few things worth mentioning. The first one I was actually surprised about because I had no idea, but in the opening FMV, standing next to Winston is none other than Lara's parents. This is confirmed in the concept art that clearly states it's them, and you can also see them walking around the title screen. And here's what they look like close up. Looking at the timeline of the series, there's a big continuity error. The Black Isle levels take place just before Last Revelation, which you'll remember showed the story of how Lara got her backpack. But as we can see, she's already wearing it. Whoops. Duke Nukem and Tomb Raider had a weird sort of joke rivalry going on back in the day, with Lara's clothes hanging in a closet in Duke Nukem Time to Kill.
You skanky outfit.
In response, the character Khrushchev is modeled and parodied after Duke Nukem, and Lara handles him the way you'd imagine.
Oh yeah.
Ooh. Lara, is that you?
If you look at Pierre's gun, you'll see a big blue N on it, which implies that he's working for Natla, and that Natla is also apparently an arms dealer. There was a limited press kit that was sent out, most likely to reviewers, and was presented as a letter left by Lara to be opened in the event of her death, showing her journal that reads like she's telling these stories herself. And lastly, if you bought the Tomb Raider movie on DVD, you could use it as a DVD-ROM and play an exclusive demo of Chronicles. Back when physical media was valued and DVDs came with tons of special features.
Number 2.
Glitches. All of the usual glitches from previous games still work, like the corner bug, but you really only have to worry about those if you're a speedrunner. In the old mill, it's possible to climb to areas you aren't meant to reach if you can pull off some tricky acrobatics. This can lead you to being able to go out of bounds and completely break the immersion. On the level Red Alert, there's a few common bugs that can soft lock the game. If you save the game while riding the elevator, it's possible that when the save is loaded, the doors will never open, leaving Lara stuck. Red Alert is so notorious for having several bugs related to saving and loading actually, including one I experienced on stream where the cyborg guy doesn't chase Lara when he's supposed to, making it impossible to move forward. Yeah, but the problem is I didn't make multiple saves. Hold on, I'm gonna look at this walkthrough and see if it says anything about a glitch. The second cyborg falls into one of the pits and is trapped there and you can't kill him, so you can't get the second key and finish the level. Fuck. If you ever equip Lara with guns she isn't supposed to have, they show up as her pelvis in your inventory, and when Lara shoots them, it looks like this. And just for fun, while she's holding her MP5, if you get her to forward roll out of a crawl space the right way, her arm can get stuck in weird positions. And this can happen with several weapons with mixed results. While playing as young Lara, sometimes when interacting with the torch, Lara's hand will display the wrong texture and show her suddenly wearing a glove. In Rome, if you can get to this ledge by using the corner bug, you can aim through this window and deal premature damage to the Trojan boss. When the boss fight starts, he will just instantly die. You can also cause an interesting glitch if you corner bug here, which skips a trigger and causes two Larsens to appear at the same time.
Number 1.
Development. And closing off today, I just wanted to go over what I researched about the making of this game and the state of the franchise at the time. Last Revelation was truly intended to be the final game in the franchise, but as business goes, the shareholders demanded another Tomb Raider game, so Chronicles began production, despite the developers being completely exhausted and burnt out at this point. The game brought a couple new moves, like the amazing ability to finally forward roll out of a crawl space. The story this time around was also structured very differently, and set up for Chronicles being told in 4 parts, which was heavily inspired by the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, a TV show that aired back in 1992. Writer Andy Sandom decided to have some fun and bring back Pierre and Larson to add some spice and some backstory, while also tying things together a bit more. A lot of the ideas in Chronicles were actually pitched for Last Revelation, but were rejected with the lead wanting the game to focus on tombs. Each area was designed to focus on a different theme. The Rome levels were to emulate classic Tomb Raider, the Russian levels were focused on stealth, the Ireland levels wanted to have a more supernatural feel and give the challenge of having no weapons, and the New York levels were meant to be more action and stealth focused, as well as introducing new elements like having Zip as a companion, who we'd even see later return in Legend and Underworld. And probably the most prolific and important thing to come from the development of Chronicles was TRLE, or the Tomb Raider Level Editor, that was a separate program and allowed players to make their own Tomb Raider levels. There have literally been thousands of levels made by fans, ranging from Supernatural to Hannah Montana to remakes, reimaginings, crossovers, and some truly epic levels. Tomb Raider fans are still making levels to this day, all free and playable to anyone, and it has been keeping the classic games alive for all these years, and that is an amazing thing. So what are your thoughts on Chronicles? I know a lot of Tomb Raider fans really didn't like this game, but I love it and it will always hold a special place in my heart. If you want to know about some of the other games in the Tomb Raider franchise, be sure to check out my other videos just like this one. Oh, and be sure to put on your opera gloves before you slap the hell out of that like button. Make sure to drink some water today, and if you have a cat or dog, be sure to give them some pets from me. Until next time, I'm Kai Morgan, and as always, thanks for watching Ink Ribbon. And a very special thank you to all of my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. Your extra support means the world to me and helps me keep making content for you guys.